A guy and two girls were having fun at a nightclub drinking alcohol. He was a scumbag of this world, greedy, proud, the burden of his family, begging his mom for money to go clubbing. Jo Shur-hung is a psychopath who comes from an aristocratic family who provoked his sister into throwing herself off a roof, grabbing the air with his hands in an attempt to catch her. He didn't make it. He had fallen into the abyss of self-abuse and guilt. After 5 years, he transformed into a renowned divine Ziwei, but he chose not to become a true god. He chose rebirth to change his destiny. In this life, he does good and rolls up evil. In this life, he protects his family. Here he must take a new path of urban deity. Standing in the center of the pillars, he prayed to the supreme gods. Now he was willing to give up becoming a god in 5,000 years of cultivation just to return, earnestly asking to be allowed to change his past. Clouds converged in the sky. A beam of light struck center on the spot where the guy was standing. Reality began to distort, things around them losing their former appearance. 2017, when it was a warm May day outside, there was a crackle of unexpected lightning over the building. The young man was thrown into the area outside this building as if through a portal. Unsuccessfully choosing a location, he fell into the bushes. A little confused, he wondered if it was a success after all, then shouted joyfully that he was back. He was transported into the body of a student of Luncheon Technical University. At this time, the bell from the end of class rang. Crowds of joyful students emerged from their classrooms, each with their own lives simmering within the walls of this institution. Tears came to the boy's eyes as he remembered his former family. Joyful thoughts did not leave him. At last he had returned to atone for his sin, confidently said the lad, which from now on would not allow him to harm his family. His place of residence is the dormitory of Luncheon University. The room was number 1103. Stepping inside, he saw a clean room, with everything he needed. Glancing at the electronic clock that stood on the table, he saw the date. He needed quick money and time to change his family's situation. Immediately, I opened my laptop to search for information, but he needs at least a yuan to start. The door to the room was opened by three guys talking about their plans. They saw a young man at a table typing something into a laptop. One of them called him by name, telling him that he had again failed to attend class. The boy paid no attention to his words and continued to look for the information he needed. He spoke to him again, asking him to treat them to dinner tonight, but all I got in response was ignore. The neighbor started to get angry, saying he was penniless and dared to ignore it. Then he threatened to tell the whole class about his top secret, but those words didn't hurt him one bit. He called him a fake because the guy was not from a rich family, threatened that he would tell the whole school about it. His friend tried to calm his violent emotions, saying that if he wanted to be rich, then let him be. Leaning in front of him gently said, however, as fellow dorm mates, let him show some appreciation for keeping his secret. He put the laptop away in his bag with the words, let them all know. The comrades were stunned by his statement. An angry neighbor shouted after him, waving his notebook at him. The notebook crashed into the door that had slammed a moment before. After his return, the young man had lost his cultivation, so a way must be found to regain his power. He came to the PC drop-off center for repair. The woman behind the counter was waving a fan in front of her face from the heat. She put the price for his laptop at 800 yuan. She said it was still not little since he had used it for more than 3 years, so it was already old. His mom, while working, had been saving money for months to buy him this laptop. Now its maximum price is 800 yuan. The guy held out his hand with money with these heavy thoughts. At university, he fooled around, enjoying the life of the rich. Constantly got my mom to give me more money when I was on zeros. He read those messages on his phone where he brazenly asked her for more for his outings to clubs and such places, to which his mom was irrevocable. Tears of regret for his unwise actions appeared in his eyes. Someone suddenly called out to the guy. In front of him stood a girl in a puzzled state. It was his little sister. It was clear from the look in his eyes that he was sorry for that situation in his past life, because back then she was in trouble because of him. Pressure from Jo Shur-hong forced her to commit suicide. His hands clenched into fists at such unpleasant memories and anger at himself. Because of his silence while his thoughts were immersed in the past, the girl asked if everything was alright. Muli immediately waved away with an awkward smile and said that it was fine. The guy mentally promised himself that this time he would protect her, while the girl at this moment was looking for something in her bag. Taking out a small bag from her bag, she handed it to her boyfriend and told him that it contained 5,000 yuan, that she earned it from her temporary job. Her sister told him to take it and stop asking her mom for money. The guy was surprised at her offer to take the money. Without waiting for an answer, she shoved them into his hands. "Are you playing dumb again?" The girl said in a raised tone that she had found out that he had threatened his mother that he would drop out of school if she didn't give him money, adding that she also knew that he was fooling around with his friends again. His sister yelled at him to be realistic about this life. He had to take the bag of money in his hand since the girl was insistent on it. She was about to leave when Muli told her to take them for herself and use them for school. He didn't need them. Without turning her head to him, she said quietly that she had dropped out of school. This information shocked him. He asked why she did it. She replied that they had tons of debt. Loan sharks were after them. There was no way mom could pay back that much. So she had to drop out of school to work and help her family somehow. Muli came up from behind and gently hugged his sister. She didn't expect such tactility from his side. The girl asked irritably what he was doing. He sincerely apologized to her. Those words hurt her feelings. He had never said such a thing to her. He took her hands with words to give him a few days. In that time he promised to solve their problems. In his eyes there was a sincere desire to make things right. The girl looked at him warily with thoughts that this guy was some other guy today. Crowds of people were passing through the streets of the city, hurrying about their business without noticing each other. Everyone was immersed in their routine. Muli entered a hardware store. After selecting the desired item, he paid an elderly salesman for it, heading in the right direction. In his hands he carried a bowl of household chemicals and such things. But he didn't go back to the dormitory. He went into the woods. In a metal basin, among the trees, something was simmering on a fire. Reluctantly, he stirred the potion with a wooden stick, saying that there was practically no spiritual energy on earth. So he needed to concoct a spiritual elixir if he wanted to cultivate faster. A yellow glowing vapor emanated from the boiling elixir, and lo and behold, it was finally ready. The guy looked at him carefully, his face blinded by the bright light. Muli shouted that it was a success. Looking at the clear elixir he had brewed, poured the contents into a bowl. I drank it all in one gulp. A translucent light formed around his body, which activated his power. The Shenxian guidance he practiced is the most effective cultivation method. If he reaches the first stage of Lian Qi, of which there are 5 in total, he can easily surpass the strength of an ordinary person. An hour later of cultivation activation, he opened his eyes. During this time, he was able to reach the early Lian Qi stage, swung his fist into the air in joy. With this blow, he managed to break a hole in the tree trunk with ease. He was proud of his strength. Now the current Muli should be able to easily handle ordinary Chinese martial artists. That task completed. The next was to figure out the fastest way to make money. He looked away, then said, "This looks promising." There was a sign on the building signed to an internet cafe. In the game room, people were immersed in computer games, the atmosphere filled with music and player commentary. Muli was also among those present. But except he wasn't playing, he opened a page with the G-Yuan Trading Network. It is also known as the Global Black Market, a platform where people trade information and goods, post and accept jobs. Reading the information about it said that Wu Zun must be one of the fields among martial artists. Still, a mere mortal, he said, clicking his mouse. On the screen, he saw a message from an anonymous customer with an offer to kill Su Jiazi, the daughter of millionaire Su Wen in Longsang. The reward was money of 10 million. The mission accepted by Feng Chi-zi of the assassin clan. He read their anonymous correspondence on the murder plan. There are even people who are willing to go to the trouble of killing a girl for 10 million. The next mission was to protect this girl. The reward is 20 million. People wrote that this is a very dangerous mission. As to interfere with the man who went to kill, very dangerous. But it even interested the guy. Immediately he started typing something on the keyboard. He clicked on the message to accept this mission. Immediately shocked people started asking where this rookie named Wu Ji came from. There were also taunts that the rookie had challenged a famous assassin. Muli took off his headphones. The phone on the table vibrated. Lying screen down, the guy picked up the phone and introduced himself that Wu Ji was him, gave his location and asked me to send someone to pick him up. The voice on the phone interjected about the area being in a huge, expensive-looking house. The girl who worked as the rich man's assistant checked with him to see if the man he had just spoken to was reliable. He replied that it was already a miracle that someone had taken it on. His name was Su Wen, 45, president of Su Corporation, and said they would discuss further when they met. Half an hour later, an expensive car pulled up to his house. Muli got out of the car. Looking at the house, he said how huge it was, which really amazed him. Su Wen, seeing the guy, was surprised at how young he looked. He extended his hand to the young man for introduction, after which he hospitably invited him into the house. Muli said that he would like to explore the surroundings first. The man offered to talk during the walk without resistance. Walking through the beautiful neighborhood near his home, he began to tell his situation that he has a nemesis in the business world with whom they have been feuding for years. He recently provided the police with information about his enemy about his illegal earnings. He continued that he is now wanted and on the run. I never thought that he would use such methods to take revenge on me, Suwon said, but it was as if he was ignoring everything as he looked at the area. He paid attention to the chirping of the birds that perched on the columns by the fence. Not far away, the water from the small fountain that stood in the green garden was murmuring, enjoying the atmosphere. He told Mr. Su that his villa was so quiet and cozy. They were in the center of a snug line of sight, but beyond it, men with machine guns were running around, watching them on cameras, passing gesturing signals one to one. The warm rays of the evening sun descended upon the land, engulfing the beautiful green gardens. Muli said that his villa is quite quiet, even though it is a bit crowded. It only took him to go around the neighborhood once to notice the bodyguards. Suwon was surprised. Muli with a calm look added that for a first-class assassin, these people were not a hindrance. His words made the man even more astonished. Their conversation was interrupted by Su Wen's assistant, alerted that Mr. Lin had arrived. A young lad and an older man entered his courtyard. The older one's name is Lin Yu, 62, a middle-ranked martial artist. The other is Zhao Chuan, 26, a disciple of Lin Yu, a low-ranked martial artist. Lin Yu exhaled heavily. Sadness was red in his eyes. He said that he wished he could bring more help, but once they found out their opponent Feng Qi, they immediately refused. Su Wen's gaze was filled with anxiety. Don't despair. Your father was an old friend of mine. I will do my best to find a solution for you, Lin Yu told him while bowing and greeting. Lin Yu suspiciously noticed the unfamiliar guy to the side and asked who it was. Su Wen introduced the guy to those who had accepted the mission in Ji Yuan, whose name was Wu Ji. The guy stood silently, adjusting the tie on his shirt. His such a young age shocked Lin Yu and his disciple Zhao Chuan. The guy was approached by Zhao Chuan asking him what he thought he was worth 20 million. Zhao Chuan's teacher immediately told him not to be so disrespectful. Suwon tried to stabilize the situation by saying that they were all friends here who had come to help, so there was no need to quarrel. In Su Wen's mind, the thought still flashed through his mind that this guy was really too young and would be of little use. But it didn't matter. We should listen to his plan first. The man approached him asking what he was going to do. With persistence, Wu Ji replied that his plans were to remove all surrounding surveillance and bodyguards. Lin Yu didn't take his words seriously and asked that he was trying to replace Feng Qi to prove himself, but that assassin couldn't easily fall for such a simple trick. Wu Ji rejected his assumption, saying that it was because they were too weak and would only get in the way underfoot. All three men stood dumbfounded by his self-assurance. Suwon, watching his actions, reflected that this guy was quite brave. As for the two of them, the teacher and his disciple, they are barely able to stay, Wu Ji told them. These words made Zhao Chuan angry. With anger, he poked his finger at him with shouts that he seemed to want to check it, saying that there was nothing special about him. Wu Ji responded to his criticism with a sneer, saying that he wasn't even qualified to test him. Zhao Chuan became furious at such statements towards him. Wu Ji said that if he wanted to try it out, he should let him call everyone who knows how to fight, and they could come right away. The pleasant sight of the sunset pleased the eyes with its unusual hues in the sky. Suwon suggested that he just have a one-on-one duel with Zhao Chuan. The guy replied that there was no need for that. A large number of guards came out from behind the bushes with batons in their hands. Wu Ji boldly told them to come closer. With a smirk, Zhao Chuan said that they would see how long he could last. The armed bodyguards moved from their seats, intent on proving him wrong. They mobbed the guy. Wu Ji stood still and did not react in any way to the stout men moving towards him. Lin Yu and Su Wen were surprised that he didn't resist. The first of the crowd of bodyguards jumped toward him. His fist was already at the guy's face, but some invisible force kept him from making the blow. There was a sudden explosion. From the shockwave, the crowd of guards lost concentration over themselves and flew off in different directions. They were flung to the ground, the black glasses they wore to maintain their image flying off their faces. Wu Ji was satisfied with the result of his spiritual elixir that gave him non-human strength. The three men were at a loss for words at what they saw. With a shocked look, Suwon said that he didn't even move. In the head of the most senior teacher, there was some thought about his strength. Wu Ji called out with a hand gesture to Zhao Chuan, telling him to come over as well. There was anger on his opponent's face from this guy's self-confidence. Despite his unusual strength, he still wanted to prove himself. his feet left the surface of the earth. Taking a high jump, he decided to give it a swinging kick with his foot, but even as he did so, the guy stood perfectly still. Wu Ji set his hand aside. A blue light emitted from it in the form of a circle. Zhao Chuan flew backwards before he could make the intended strike. The force that Wu Ji launched at him was so enormous that he broke the tree in half with his body. His back took the brunt of the impact against the tree trunk. To Lin Yue, this strength index was simply impossible. He was amazed by absolutely every action he took. Wu Ji turned to face them, expecting the next shocked words. Lin Yu collapsed to his knees, asking him to forgive him for being wrong about his capabilities. "Master, even you can't stand up to him?" Zhao Chuan asked in surprise as he tried to get to his feet. The man lowered his gaze down and replied with a certain sense of sadness that even Mr. Liu, who had only broken through to the Zun realm, would not be able to win in a duel with Mr. Wu Ji. Su Wen immediately questioningly exclaimed, "What?" after hearing from the master. Lin Yu reiterated what he had just said, adding that Mr. Wu Ji was a Wu Zun with a high cultivation level. Zhao Chuan was stunned at the information he heard. Su Wen was as shocked as he was. The girl with golden hair had just woken up. Yawning on her bed, she asked what was going on outside. She was wearing pajamas in the shape of a bunny. Even the ears on her head were present. She was awakened by the noise that came from outside. Outside, night was already closing in. After finishing demonstrating their strength, the guys went inside the house to rest with a cup of hot tea. Su Wen told Wu Zun that he was indeed endowed with an impressive talent. The guy replied that it was just skills, but in his thoughts, he was glad that they seemed to take him for Wu Zun. "My daughter's safety is in your hands. What can I do for you?" Su Wen asked the guy. Wu Zun said he has two conditions. The first is $20 million up front, and the second is that everything he says is about security. The man said he would do it immediately. Picking up the teacup, Wu Zun warned that he needed the money as soon as possible, and he had somewhere to go tomorrow. Shouted the man for needing to go somewhere, because according to Feng Qi's killing style, he would take action within these 2 days. The guy replied that let her go with him then. Su Wen thought about his suggestion as someone suddenly called out to him. A girl named Su Jiaqi, 19 years old, she was Su Wen's only daughter, came down the stairs. Her father yelled at her for her appearance, in which she allowed herself to go out to the guests. The girl replied that all she does is eat and sleep. What else would she wear if not pajamas? The annoyed Su Wen wanted to say something else to her, but Lin Yu tried to calm him down by saying that she was just upset about being at home 24 hours a day, so she was also understandable. She pointed her finger at the strange guy who was drinking his tea, asking who he was. Her father rudely replied to her that Mr. G was an important guest in their home who would protect her, so she should show respect. The girl looked back at him with pathos. The guy set the cup on the table in silence, after which, he calmly stood up and approached the girl. "Miss Su, you will have to follow my plan for a month. However, I will not restrict your freedom." Jia Qi replied that she wanted to go out then. Wu Ji glanced at her father, waiting for his permission. Su Wen still allowed it, but was wary of his decision. The girl rejoiced that she could finally go free. He said that the girl would be able to go out with Mr. G tomorrow, and would have to be in his sight, so didn't even dare to run anywhere. She was thrilled. She promised she wouldn't do it, but in her mind she was telling herself that who knows if she'd listened to some worthless bodyguard after she got out. The next day, the car was rushing at high speed with loud music playing inside. Wu Ji looked at the notification on his phone that 20 million yuan had been credited to his card. Next to him sat a joyful Jia Qi, who asked Uncle Quan to go downtown since she hadn't gone shopping for a long time. He tucked his phone into his pocket and said they were going to Luanshan University. There was a look of incomprehension on the girl's face at his words. "Uncle Quan, who will you listen to?" the girl asked him unhappily. The driver replied to her that her father had ordered her to follow Mr. G today without question. Such words shocked the girl. She started asking to stop the car, saying she would get further on her own. In a fit of anger, she tugged on the handle of the locked car door. The driver looked in the rear-view mirror, his look as if tired of her pushy behavior. Wu Tzu asked him to stop the car. With a sudden movement, he applied the brakes. A sharp sound was heard as the wheels rubbed against the road. Opening the door, the girl smiled happily and said then she was off. Out in the fresh air, she heard the cawing of a crow. Looking around, only empty valleys, trees, and a bird in a devastated tree came into her eyes. The door immediately slammed back. With a similarly sharp pull on the gas, they drove on. You could tell by the look on her face that she was resentful that she couldn't go where she wanted to go. Wu Zhu offered her this option. She doesn't make a scene, and he, once he's done with his business, can escort her wherever she wants to go. Jia Qi unhappily took her gaze aside, pondering his suggestion. After a short drive, they found themselves at the right place, Lanshan University. The girl got out of the car asking where they were. Nothing much here in her opinion. Wu Zhu got out of the car following her. The girl pounded her fist on the roof of the car unhappily. The guys from the balconies of the dormitory started calling out to the strange beautiful girl to look at them. Someone even banged on a bowl to get her attention. Wu Zhu wordlessly told her to follow him. How can I walk into a place like this? The driver approached her and gently said that the master had instructed to always be in Mr. Wu Ji's line of sight. The guy didn't stop to tell her that if she still wanted to go shopping, she should hurry. She immediately ran to catch up with him, leaving the sounds of clacking heels behind her. Wu Zhu opened the door to her room. The girl had never been in places like this and kept turning around. By the feel of it, she was not comfortable being here. With disgust, Jia Qi said that it was just gross. In the room, she saw 3 half-naked guys, Wu Zhu's roommates, playing on their phones with loud emotions. With a smile, one of them said that it was the young master who had returned to them and even brought a beautiful bird with him. The other 2 guys started smirking, inviting her to play with them. Jia Qi hid behind Wu Ji's back. Their words were vile to her and their appearance even more so. The guy with the firm voice told them all to get the hell out of the room. The guys started saying it was just a joke, and they were buddies after all. Muli didn't wait long for them to understand and decided to take extreme action. Violet fire began to emanate from his body, which meant that he would now have to exert his power. He decided to work on them psychologically. It seemed to them that the skulls that filled the entire room were asking them to give him their souls, threatening death and similar pressures that just drove them crazy. Under this exposure, they began to cry. Panic and fear came over them. They fell on their knees begging not to be killed, that they were sorry over their words, begging for mercy. A faintly visible diffuse light emanated from the guy's eyes. The girl, slightly panicked, asked what was happening to them. Wu Ji calmly replied that it was nothing special, just an illusion. He asked her to wait a bit while he got a change of clothes. Having finished their business, they walked back to their vehicle. Jia Qi asked to explain what kind of trickery he had just used. The guy leaned closer to her and said threateningly, since she'd already seen his power, and if she behaved badly. Jia Qi was startled by him, reflexively immediately covering herself with her hands, expecting that he might harm her in some way. Wu Ji abruptly became calm and focused again, said that it was just a joke. The girl started swinging her fists at him for scaring her, trying to avoid her weak but still blows. The guy tried to dodge her in the other direction. The driver of the car approached him asking him where to go next. Wu Ji dialed someone on the phone and asked them to wait a moment. Said Wu Ji to someone putting the phone to his ear, saying that he would meet this person soon. While in the car, he told the unknown caller to come to 107 Luanta Street. The 2 girls happily greeted Wu Ji and Jia Qi at some establishment. The guy was thrown into a stupor. Is this really his sister Mu Xian's temporary job? Jia Qi quietly giggled with a question that this is what the fetish is all about. They still headed forward to the inside of the establishment, the girl struggling to catch up with Wu Ji because of her heels. The waitress led them to a table while Jia Qi considered the staff in the hall, as she hadn't been to such thrifty places. The girl doing her job asked Mr. if he was ready to place his order, but the guy, without giving her the answer she wanted, asked if a girl named Mu Xian worked for them. She replied with a cute smile that Xiao Xian was just carrying the order to the hall right now. Xiao Xian shouted that she had a customer. The girl obediently replied that she was on her way. She was wearing the same unusual working uniform of a waiter, holding a tray on one hand. Mushi was happy to see his little sister, but some cheeky guest slapped her on the ass, shouted to her that she had kept him waiting for a long time so needed to hurry up. His posture was too open to be caught up in. From his disrespectful behavior, the girl almost missed the tray of food. He pissed Muli off as much as possible. How dare he treat a girl like this? Also his sister. The guy was determined to teach him a lesson. This arrogant guy's name was Sun Chenrun, 23 years old, the sole heir of Sun Properties Group. He told Xiao Xian to hurry up and chat with him. The girl lowered her gaze to the floor, apologizing that she couldn't do it because she had work to do. Chenrun shouted for her to wait before the girl was about to leave. In a small open box was a ring with a large gorgeous diamond. The guy provided a box containing Xiao Xian's ring with a proposal to become his girlfriend. The girl stammered. The guests in the room were shocked at such a suggestion in a crowded place. Jia Qi recognized this guy. He is the son of the director of a big company. Chenren told the girl that he knew she lived in a poor family and had a wasteful brother. She lived a hard life, promised that she would live in wealth with him. The girl turned her head away proudly, the gesture signifying a refusal of his offer. This made the arrogant Chen Jin very angry. He angrily picked up a glass of water in his hands. deliberately knocked over this glass, pouring out the contents. But he didn't pour it on the girl, he poured it down his pants. The cafe manager immediately ran to him asking what was wrong. Shenren complained that their cleaning lady had poured water on him. With insolence he said, making her lick everything, pointing to his wet spot. The man turned to the innocent waitress with an angry look. You could tell by the look on his face that he was about to tell her off. He was about to hit the girl, screaming, accusing her of doing a bad job, even though she was many times weaker. His hand abruptly stopped moving due to someone wrapping a strong grip around it. Muaxian stood in front of him. The man asked for him to be released immediately. In one motion, with almost no effort at all, Muaxian tossed him aside so that with his weight he broke in half the table he had fallen on. The guests and workers of the establishment stood with a shocked look. Muaxian didn't expect to see her big brother here. Jia Qi was amazed that her bodyguard was so strong. Shenren jumped up from his seat, shouting at the young youth who he was. The guy didn't report to him and immediately took him by the throat with one hand and pulled him to the floor. The man hit his back hard. Managing to raise only one hand up, began to say Muli about being the heir of Sun Properties Group. How dare he with such a status hit him? Oh, I didn't know Sun Properties Group was so powerful, said Jia Qi. The guy thought the voice sounded familiar. He turned his gaze sideways to confirm his suspicions. I'm sure. What do you want to contact him? The girl walked up to Wu Ji, put her hand on his shoulder, and asked the arrogant rich guy with confidence in his strength. A kind of fear appeared in his eyes. Jia Qi shouted after him on the doorstep of the cafe with Wu Ji. Won't he let them talk to his father? In their eyes the guy looked ridiculous. He can't even stand up for himself but made himself look like he's allowed to do anything. Shenren was very unhappy to have met them right here. Running away, he tripped over his own feet, shouted to them that he would never forget this. Jia Qi told her bodyguard that he owed her for this. The young man rejected her words by saying that it was that guy who owed her for saving him. Someone suddenly tugged at the guy's shirt. It was his sister who, in a quiet voice, asked to leave the place. Muli walked down the street talking to Muaxian while Jia Qi didn't disturb them and slowly followed them from behind, giving them a chance to talk to his sister. The guy asked why she worked here. Muaxian sadly replied that she was paid well here. These words stunned the lad, for his little sister was putting up with this because of him. As passers-by began to turn around at them, Muaxian noticed that she hadn't changed out of her work uniform yet. Muli asked Jia Qi if she knew where to buy clothes. The girl immediately replied happily that he had asked just the right person. The store employees cheerfully greeted them as they entered the women's clothing store. Muaxian tried on the first dress. It was blue in color and looked very even stylish and also fit her very well. The girl awkwardly asked how she was in not, trying to pick some poses for a better display. Jia Qi inspected it and said that it looked great, mentioning that she always chose only the best. Muli confirmed her words. Muaxian looked at the price tag of the dress. When she saw how much it cost, she immediately said it was too expensive, so she'd better go and return it to its place. Jia Qi told her not to worry as her brother is rich and has enough money to buy even a whole clothing store, so buying clothes for him is not a problem. The guy at this time looked at her a bit in confusion. My sister immediately exclaimed how it was even possible that her brother was rich. After all, they always had money problems. The girl explained to her that he was now her bodyguard and his salary was high. Muli had a self-satisfied smile on his face. After making the purchase, they went out to the car. The guy handed the bags of clothes to his sister and said that he had transferred 200,000 yuan to her, asked her to keep some for herself and send the rest to her mother. She picked up her purchases and asked her brother if he wanted to explain anything to her. He replied that he met a mysterious master who enlightened him and taught him martial arts. This was the reason why he had changed so much. The girl asked, wondering if he thought she would fall for that nonsense. Standing beside the car, he sincerely told his sister that he had changed, to which Muaxian used a common saying as an answer: a leopard doesn't change its spots for nothing. After this pessimistic answer, their gazes met. Interrupting the short pause, Muaxian started laughing. She was on her way to leave and turned around and happily said it was good that he had changed and would be sure to tell her mom about the day. Muli asked to tell his mother that he was sorry. The girl called out to him to tell her himself. Hey, come to think of it, qualified Mr. Muaxian said to herself. He was about to open the door to the car when Jia Qi on the other side said with a sneer that he turned out to be a Siscon man. Muli became embarrassed and blushed at her words. Slamming the door behind him, the guys got into the car. The girl reminded him that she'd helped him out quite a bit today, so he'd have to decide how to repay her for that. The guy leaned back in his seat, sat in a comfortable position putting his hands behind his head, told her he would follow her wherever she wanted to go until the end. The girls' shouts of joy were immediately heard from the car, after which they were on their way down the highway to town. They stopped near a tall building. Finally Jia would finally have a shopping spree that she was looking forward to. The yellow sun hung over the tall skyscrapers in the big city. Muli walked fully laden with bags of things that Jia had bought. He wondered how this girl could have such a good mood. "I'm so happy today," Jia said happily while stretching her arms. The guy reluctantly confirmed her words while sitting in the back seat where half of the cabin was occupied by her purchases. As suddenly his condition changed, as if he felt some kind of alarm. The driver, noticing this, asked what was wrong, but the guy didn't want to cause a panic just yet and said it was fine. After waiting for the car to pull away, an unfamiliar guy, his face covered behind a mask and goggles, relayed information through an earpiece in his ear that the target was on his way. The sun was already hiding behind the clouds, letting me enjoy the scarlet sunset. The car was already outside of town, passing through forests and steeps. But before them was an obstacle in the form of a severed tree in the middle of the road, which in no way made it possible to pass. The driver ran out with great surprise why this tree is lying in the middle of the road, followed by Muli getting out of the car asking what happened. A gunshot was heard among the trees, and the birds, frightened by the loud sounds, flew off the branches to the sides. There was a sudden look of consternation and panic on the driver's face after he saw something off to the side, right in front of his face. Before it hit, the bullet from the gun stopped in midair. From what he saw, he couldn't stand on his feet and fell to the floor in panic, shouting at Wu Ji and pointing his finger at the frozen bullet above his head. With a smirk, Wu Ji thought, since they were using such methods, he would play along, looking at the same bullet in front of him, which he was also able to stop. The shell of his hand was glowing with a bright white light. This was how he used his power. Setting it aside, he closed his eyes and mentally began to use his gifts. The bullets flew backwards to where they came from. They hit the center of the forehead of the two guys. Death didn't wait long and blood instantly rushed from their mouths. Jia sleepily opened the car door to see what the noisy sounds had woken her up. Not immediately noticing the carnage, she asked Uncle Quian why they were sitting on the ground. The driver who was hiding behind the car shouted to her to immediately get back into the car as they were ambushed. The girl immediately panicked. Suddenly she smelled something, not realizing where it was coming from. The sleeping gas spread in the air. Jia collapsed on her knees in an attempt to cover her nose to inhale less of it. The thought that it was already time for the reception immediately arose in the guy's mind. People could be heard talking not far from the vehicle. They were heading towards the guys, each with a different weapon in their hands. Words coming from them asking where the bastard was. Jia was lying on the ground with no strength to resist due to the effects of the soporific gas. She barely squeezed out a few words in which she called out to Muli. What the masked men were saying was to waste no time and take the target as soon as possible. Suddenly, they heard someone's voice from behind them. A male voice asked where they were going with a smile. "Oh, shit, he's trapped us." The invaders were terrified. One of them shouted that he couldn't outlast them all, urging the rest of the team to take him down. They mobbed Muli. "A 6 is a 6, Muli said with a confident look, holding up a leaf from the tree. He swiped the sheet in a circle, making a turn, thereby slitting the throats of everyone close by with the words that they shouldn't overestimate themselves. "He's killing her with a simple leaf," one of the team realized with horror. He kneeled down and asked Muli where the master was from in Luanshan City, who told him that he had never answered his question, so he didn't know how to ask. Muli, with the threat of his kill sheet, reiterated the question of where they were going. The guy pulled the gas mask off his face and replied with a sneer that unfortunately he would have to disappoint him, judging from the information he had received. In his teeth he bit open a pill that had powder inside. The guy started choking on blood along with the effects of the powder. The dying body fell to the ground. Muli shouted that he had taken poison. This decision was not favorable to him as he would not be able to find out the truth. He realized there was nothing he could do about it. He felt it was his fault for not having foreseen it. He pointed his hand toward the forest to feel out the right information with the words that these 6s could be hiding in the trees. With his abilities, he was able to push the trees apart with his energy force, making a line of sight in the center. Suddenly from behind him he heard words that referred to the girl. Someone's hand touched the necklace on Jiaqi's neck, thus applying magic. The girl questioningly opened her eyes slightly. In front of her, she vaguely saw the form of Muli, who was repeating her name over and over again in an attempt to bring her to consciousness. After realization, she realized that Muli was looking at her. The The girl immediately fell into a terrifying state. Immediately she rose to her feet, covering her body with her arms with her hands, screaming to the guy what he was doing, to which he calmly replied that he was just saving her. She averted her gaze to the side in fear. Looking around, panic gripped her. She asked about those people. Muli replied that they were hired assassins. At this time he was doing something over the sleeping driver. The man opened his eyes with heavy concentration. Seeing the dead bodies in the middle of the road, he shouted asking what had happened here. Muli replied that they would talk when they got back to the house. Sitting in the common room, opposite Su-Wen and Lin-Yu, he explained the entire situation that had happened. Su-Wen thoughtfully looked down, pondering the situation. Muli, remembering an important detail, said that on everyone's wrist, there is a mark in the form of a leaf. Said they apparently didn't even know the most rudimentary techniques. Lin-Yu added that he seemed to have heard of this leaf-shaped mark before, but unfortunately his memory doesn't allow him to recall. The girl's father said that since she had been attacked again, it was better to reinsure her and stop letting her out on the street. With these words he exhaled heavily, realizing the complexity of the situation. Muli agreed with their opinion and said that it would be better and asked Mr. Su if he could ask him to find some jade jewelry. The man was surprised at his request. He asked the manageress, who was in the room with them the whole time, to help Wu Ji with the matter. The young girl accepted his request and opened a small box in her hands. It contained a round, with a hole in the middle, green jewelry. The boy picked up the box. It was exactly what he needed. Su-Wen suggested to Lin-Yu that perhaps he would use them to exorcise evil spirits, to which the man replied that only rogues practiced exorcising spirits, and people experienced in martial arts did not believe in such things. Muli smiled and apologized for saying the wrong thing. As night fell, he sat in a room, moonlight streaming in through the window. In his hands he held an open jewelry box with a bright purple light emanating from it. He took one of the pieces of jewelry in his hand, after which he snapped his fingers. Jia Qi came into his room, asking him what he needed since it was very late. He held out a green piece of jewelry in his hand in the shape of a large ring and said to put it on his bare body. The girl focused her attention on the words that it was to be put on the head of the body. In shock she asked why it was necessary. In the common room, Su-Wen sitting on the sofa asked Mr. Wu Ji what it was in his hand, in which he held a green ornament, holding it out to the guards and asked them to give him a gun. The man presented the weapon to him without further ado. In the air, he tossed the melted jewelry into a geometric shape, with Jia Qi's hair attached to the end of it. On the fly he fired a shot at the thing. The loud sudden sound made those present in the room shudder with fear, but the shell that formed around this object acted as a defense. So the bullet, hitting it, flew backwards. Lin-Yu was amazed at such ingenuity. Leaning closer he said, "This is simply mind-boggling." After which, the object shattered in Wu Ji's hand. Su-Wen realized that it could only be used once. Lin-Yu said, "One time is one life saved, as such artifacts don't last long." Wu Ji immediately dismissed their thoughts, saying that it was only for visual demonstration, so he made it disposable. The men were very surprised at his words. The guy showed them some of the same products in his hand and told them that these were real, and also, each could be used 4 to 5 times. Lin-Yu was once again astonished even more. Su-Wen asked if one could not be given to Jia Qi. The guy provided them with their amulets in their hands and said that her own she had already received, so Mr. Su should take one for himself, and the rest the guy asked to send to his mother and sister. The man said he'd get right on it. The guy thanked him and headed out of the room. On the second day, when the sun was already high in the sky and blinding with its warm rays, Jia Qi held a green ring-shaped artifact in her hand in incomprehension. In a rage she threw it back on the table, heading for the door from the room. She said that if he was making her wear it, she wouldn't wear it on purpose, out of spite. The ring made a few turns on the spot and fell on the table with a loud sound. Su-Wen was sitting on the sofa drinking tea. When he saw that his daughter was going somewhere, he asked where she was going, to which Jia Qi irritably replied that she was going outside. He started to say that it was very dangerous there, and they seemed to have already discussed it, but the girl let all the concerns pass her ears and walked purposefully towards the exit. Muli, who was sitting next to the cup of tea, noticed that she didn't wear the jade bracelet for protection. He told Mr. Su that he would look after her. The man thanked him profusely. Jia Qi was infuriated by this control. They arrived in the center of the city, finding themselves in the midst of human and vehicle traffic. The girl did not turn around and asked Muli rudely that she would stop following her around. The guy replied that she would not. She made the most pitiful face possible and asked for at least 1 day, showing a number with her finger. The guy took her hand away and denied the request. His non-responsiveness annoyed her, abruptly turning around, fluttering his long hair saying he'd had enough of her. In her mind she was screaming that he was sick of her. What fun could she talk about when he was always after her? Suddenly a brilliant thought came to her mind. When she saw the door to the restroom, she immediately began to play the actress that she really needed for her needs. Also did not forget to ask Muli if he would go with her. He replied that he would let her go herself, but he understood her cunning scheme to escape. Once inside, the girl was satisfied with her work with thoughts that he had nowhere to pull with her. She managed to climb out the window into the parking lot muttering that he was a fool for trying to follow her like that. The girl was sure she had succeeded. She was helped lower and lower by an outside exhaust fan, on which she put her feet. Almost down to the ground she heard someone shouting her name. Startled, the heel flew off her foot. The beads that held them to her foot came off. Jia didn't expect to be caught red-handed. Muli caught her shoe. The girl sitting on the fan screamed that he wanted to scare her to death or something. He looked at her a little mockingly. Jia asked in bewilderment, wondering how he even managed to be here. The guy replied that she didn't tell him when it was okay to come in, since the girl was high enough to jump. Muli mockingly said that she had everything visible under her dress. She immediately jumped back into the restroom window. His words really embarrassed the girl and embarrassed her. Peeking out the bathroom door to check that he was probably still standing downstairs, but Mushi was already standing in the hallway waiting for her to come out, which was even more awkward for her since he had immediately returned there after those words. The guy stood calmly with a slight smile on his face. Within the walls of the big building, Jia resented that he was just like an evil spirit he wouldn't let go. Suddenly he looked away when he heard someone calling him. In front of him stood a cute girl named Li Yao. The girl said hello to him. She was his classmate in high school, the beautiful goddess of the whole school. Muli greeted hello back. Once upon a time, he was secretly in love with her. In his past life, when he was wandering the streets, she had helped him. Li Yao noticed the girl who was hiding around the corner in the bathroom, asked that it must be his other half. Despite the girl's strange behavior, said she was very cute. Jia was slightly dissatisfied with her conclusions. Li Yao turned to the guy and said with a smile that it was a good choice. From the open door to the restroom came Jia's shout of Shi, his girlfriend. Muli asked Li Yao about her affairs in life. She, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, replied that it wasn't bad, but added that he had changed a lot and his character was different. The guy exhaled, saying that the years were coming. After all, Li Yao asked how old he was, hinting that he hadn't grown by much yet. Suddenly the girl remembered something. She said that her birthday was coming up and she was having a party at home, so she invited Muli to the party, and promised to give the time and address later via Vicat. The guy gladly accepted her offer. Li Yao was about to leave and said that she wouldn't interfere with their date, pointing in the direction where Jia was. Muli stared at the girl's trace with words that he definitely didn't expect to see her hear, after which he reminded himself that he had many more to meet in this life. Suddenly his cell phone vibrated in his pocket. Picking up the phone, he heard the panicked voice of the driver, who said that Miss had stolen the car keys and was now driving off somewhere, and she didn't even have a license. Muli replied that there was no need to do anything, let him leave this problem to him, and after finishing the call, he realized that he had been talking to his old acquaintance and had completely forgotten about Jia in the end. He dialed someone's number on his phone with the thoughts that this annoying girl never listens to him. The black car was already speeding through the neighborhoods of the city, wiggling from side to side, attracting the gazes of passers-by. Jia was insanely happy that she was now free. Because of her ridiculous driving, the girl also attracted the attention of the police, who tried to overtake her to stop her. At this point, the girl panicked. The driver of the police car swerved forward, preventing the vehicle from proceeding any further. Jia reacted quickly and immediately pressed the brake pedal to the floor. The officer approached the open driver's side window, said they received a call that someone was driving without an ID and asked to submit it for inspection. The girl did not know what to do in this situation, as she had nothing to provide. The policeman asked her to get out of the car and follow him. When she opened the door, she heard someone telling her that if she didn't know how to do it, she shouldn't do it. Near the tree stood Muli, said that she only dishonors women driving. Jia angrily said that it turns out he was the one who called the police. The guy replied that some law-abiding citizens had done it. While waving his hand at her alluding to himself, the girl called him a creep. In the city, among the tall buildings, a girl can be heard shouting towards Muli. 3 days later, as the afternoon sun pierced its rays into the house, Muli knocked on the door of Jia's room. Peeking out in her pajamas, the girl grudgingly asked what he wanted. The guy wondered with a smile if she was still angry. She immediately slammed the door shut with the words she didn't want to see him. Muli knocked on her door again, saying that he had business to attend to. These words interested the girl in spite of her resentment. He opened the door to the nastiness, pushing her back into the room with one hand. His offer was that if she would help him this time, he would also concede something in return. The fact that he could go to meet her interested Jia. Their car was parked outside the huge mansion as the night outside was already drawing closer and the sun was getting farther away. Jia got out of the car in an evening dress, with a beautiful hairstyle and light makeup. She turned to Muli and recalled his words from yesterday that he would no longer follow her around and asked him to keep his promise. The guy for appearance agreed with her, but in his mind was a plan to watch her without her knowledge. Muli was called by his old acquaintance, Li Yao, waving her hand. A man named Li Hong, 45 years old. He was the president of Hongbei Joint Stock Company, stood beside her. He went over to say hello to her, but since Jia was next to him, Li Yao was very surprised to see her again. The girl greetingly introduced herself to Jia, recalling that she and Muli had studied together. Jia also gave her name, saying that she was Muli's mistress. This mention of mistress slightly put Li Yao in shock and Muli in embarrassment. Someone turned to him, saying that was it really Muli himself, their great prince. The guy named Wu Ming opened his arms to the sides, saying that he didn't expect to see him at their Yao Yao's party. Min has a notorious underbelly about a sycophant who once lied about stealing his wallet, and since that day had caused him tons of trouble. Muli told himself that he would never forget the humiliation after which he was discussed behind his back by every passerby at school. An old classmate immediately started talking about his shabby clothes, said that it had become uninteresting with the rich and now condescended to the poor. His friends standing nearby started laughing. Jia was eating food from the festive table, watching the whole performance, saying that his classmates were certainly not the best, to put it mildly. Noticing that the guys are not behind him, decided to intervene, told Muli that it seems that there are too many flies, too much buzzing, and suggested that he should go outside for a walk. Muli calmly agreed with her, while Wu Min was deeply affected by her words. He asked himself a little enviously and angrily what this scum of the world had done to have such a beauty by his side. But then President Sun and the young gentleman finally arrived. The man shook hands with Li Hong, apologizing for being late, saying that he was delayed on the way. The guy replied that just the mere fact that he had agreed to be present with them was already a great honor. Mr. Sun raised his glass from the crowd, turned to congratulate Li Yao, wishing her to remain as beautiful. The girl thanked him for the toast, but realized that the younger son was a known womanizer and dandy, so it was best to stay away from him. As suddenly he noticed an unfamiliar guy, wondering who it was, realized that it was the same guy who was standing next to Jia. Then when they embarrassed him at the cafe, this guy was there for him, said he wasn't going to get off easy this time. Wu Min approached Mr. Sun and introduced himself, saying that they had met once before, but there was no opportunity to get acquainted. A plan immediately emerged in Suanya's mind. He put his arm around the guy's shoulder and said that he had a case for him, asked him in a friendly way to do him a favor. The guy couldn't contradict him because of his high status, said that Suanya's case was also his case. He pointed his finger at the crowd of people, said he needed to humiliate that guy. He was talking about Muli, who was talking to his acquaintances unsuspectingly. The guy was surprised that Junior Sun and Muli had some old scores to settle, adding that he was no match for Muli in humiliating him. Muli walked over to Jia, who was eating the goodies from the table. Teasing her, said that it was better to save her figure. There were many different delicacies on the table, but the cakes were so good. It's not like I have a figure. Muli heard someone calling for him to come over. He turned back and saw Wu Min waving his hand. He realized that since he was calling him, it wouldn't end well, but he still decided to go find out what he needed. With a leisurely, confident gait, he made his way toward him. Muli calmly asked what the matter was. From behind Wu Ming, the appearance of Chen Run approaching appeared. He laughed a little from his surprise appearance when Muli was shocked to see him too after that meeting they had. Chenren suddenly started falling down, trying to grab onto Wu Ming's hand with shouts at Muli, asking why he wanted his stuff. He did fall to the floor, and Wu Min crouched over him in an attempt to lift him up, yelling to the entire guest room that not only was he stealing, but he was also beating people up, and on purpose so that people would pay attention to them. Muli was beginning to realize that he had taken up his act again. While Jia was drinking her cooling drink, she heard some noise and decided to go look. Wu Min shouted to the guests to look at this thief. Everyone, meaning Muli, people crowded together, forming a circle around the boys, whispering amongst themselves that it was Muli who had stolen something from Junior Sun, and had also beaten him up. Some girl in the back was telling the guy next to her that they were all grown-ups, but they were making a fool of themselves. Wu Min poked his finger at the guy, saying that he was still suspicious back in high school, and also that he didn't expect Muli to stay the same according to him. Suddenly, Li Yao walked out through the crowd of people. She got between the two guys and said that Muli would never do that and it was some kind of mistake. Wu Min proudly laughed at her gullibility, asked if she could not see his real face, and then turned to Muli with the words that he showed up at a girl's birthday party and immediately steals. The boy remained silent to his accusations. Wu Min discreetly took the Rolexes while shifting them somewhere. The guy noticed it out of the corner of his eye. He then grabbed Wu Min's arm as he loudly said that here it was. His Rolex was in Muli's pocket, which meant he was a thief. But Muli wasn't as stupid as them, telling them they were doing a bad job, as he suddenly swept his hand across horizontally, catching the younger son, who collapsed to the floor once again. His father, noticing this, started shouting, asking how dare he beat his son. Their assistant ran up to the guy asking if he was alright, a look of displeasure on son's face. The man pointed his finger at Muli with shouts of where this scumbag came from, ordered him to apologize to Mr. Sun right now. Sun's father was very annoyed by the situation that happened, threateningly saying that Sun's family didn't tolerate this kind of attitude, so he'd better apologize on his knees before he ended up in court. Muli wasn't going to just grovel and asked with a smirk what would happen if he didn't. Sun shouted that this kid dared to steal such an expensive watch and still dare to turn up his nose. Suddenly, some girl shouted that it was only some hundreds of thousands, and because of that it was worth making such a fuss. Her words shocked the surrounding people. It was Jia Qi. She was licking her fingers from the sweets, asking with a confident look that the Sun family had seen so little in their lifetime. The guy calling her a witch was surprised she was here, too. Near Muli on both sides became Jia Qi and Yao Li. Jia Qi said that nothing was stolen, but they are shouting about the thief. Turning to the guests asked, do they really believe in this Chiruha? She disgruntledly quietly turned to Muli asking why he was putting up with such nonsense, adding that she also had to deal with. This incident prevented her from finishing her cake. Muli looked at her with kind and grateful eyes. The man wondered who this girl was, and after all, everything happened because of such a small thing. Yao Yao must be familiar with many people like Junior Sun. Jia Qi crossed her arms on her chest and said that it was natural that they didn't know her. Did they really think that they already knew all the worthy people like her? Suna's father shouted for someone to finally take that insolent girl away. Jia Qi was surprised that this old marismatic really didn't recognize her. With a wave of her hand she walked confidently toward the exit with the thought that she had never been forcibly taken away before. Muli suddenly placed a hand on her shoulder with words to stay close to him. She was a little surprised at his appearance, as a whole crowd of people in police uniforms suddenly appeared in front of them in the corridor. Muli became forward, covering Jia Qi's hand, telling those guys to only try to touch her. The man was standing behind the guards, saying that it was better to surrender amicably, without resistance, as the people here were not the weakest. Wu Ming, who was standing beside him, shouted to his men to knock the spirit out of him without ceremony. Muli told the girl to quickly hide somewhere. Jia Qi asked what he was going to do. The guy adapted his power in the form of appearing a large head of wind, preventing the guards from getting close to him. Wu Ming tried to resist the wind, after which he guessed that Muli might be a martial arts master. Muli used illusion to confuse the guards. He made his appearance visible in completely different places. Then his angry face showed up, telling them to die. All of Muli's split personalities were doing battle with the guards. Afterward, walked between Wu Min and his father. He stopped short, leaving only the unconscious bodies of the guards and the shocked guys behind him. Just as suddenly, he heard Jia Qi's voice shouting that this old man's son should also be taught a lesson. After saying those words, he almost started to insult her back. He only laughed. Since he is the president of Sunji Company, he said that although he was strong, he wouldn't dare. After his words, he was slapped hard. Wu Min was scared for his father. He fell over his father, who was lying on the floor with a big bump on his cheek. He said to Muli, since he had infringed on his family, then he was definitely dead. The boy on his threat said to remember two simple truths. Silence is not cowardice and not weakness, and also it does not give him the right to do whatever his heart desires. Wu Min replied that he was just some kind of master, so he should know his place. Muli immediately ran up to Musun and Chenren, took out both of them by their heads and apologized to Musun, saying that he was just forced by Chenren, after which he knocked their foreheads one against the other with great force. The guys fell to the floor, Jia Qi shouting admiringly to him from the crowd how cool he was. Yao Li's father asked to leave immediately and said that he would help them, apologized to him. After all, he is still pulling his weight with him. The daughter went up to him and said that Wu Min only confessed. They framed Muli. The man grudgingly replied that she did not understand anything. Some stranger in glasses and with 2 guards entered their hall. The guests began to shout with admiration that this man was a real king of commerce. It was Su Wen. He asked Mr. Wu Ji what happened there. Muli looked at it and thought that Su Wen treated this boy with such respect. Junior son got up from the floor holding his sore head, told Li Hong to call people here. Let them send this brat to jail for a few years. Wu Ji Yao Li's father gently told Mr. Sun that it was better for him to keep quiet. The one raised his head and fell into shock when he saw Mr. Su in front of him. Su Wen turned to Mr. Sun, said that today's incident caused someone in his family to lose face, and his daughter and her friend had a little quarrel with his son, so he felt that they old people shouldn't sue over such small things, then asked his opinion about it. Mr. Sun almost called his daughter, then immediately corrected the word to girl, wondering if she was really his daughter. He immediately kneeled down in front of Muli and began to apologize as much as he could, saying that he was sorry for completely failing to recognize them. Muli roughly told him to remove his hands and he better not get too close. Jia Qi said that now everyone knows that their Muli is very dangerous, and it seems that he has not become more modest over the years. She heard the girls in front saying amongst themselves that Muli was very cool, after which, the women's shoes and other things started flying to the sides. The girls fought over the guy. Jia Qi stood in complete shock at this. She immediately shouted loudly to Muli that she hated him with all her heart. The younger son told him that they were classmates and asked him to add him to Witchit. Mr. Sun, who was led away in tears, told Wu Ji that his eyes had deceived him and asked him to forgive his ignorance and not to stoop to his level. Someone jumped up from the crowd of people addressing Muli that the people from the military alliance wanted to meet with him. Muli, who was surrounded by his female fans, wondered what kind of military alliance this was. He walked up the stairs with Lin Yu asking what kind of organization this was. The man said that the Martial Union is an association of Chinese martial artists specialized in resolving all issues related to their activities, and the union also directly reports to the country's top leadership. It is said that this time they gathered about the sudden attack on Miss Su. After his story, he opened the door to the next room. They went inside together. Lin Yu turned to Mr. Bai sitting there, said that he had brought Mr. Wu Ji to him. At this time, the other guys were looking at them with a slightly displeased look. At the table sat Bai Shan, 57 years old. He is the head of the 2nd Department of the Luanshan County Military Union. Lin Yu introduced him to Wu Ji. Some guy from their team looked at the guy and said that Wu Ji was so young, but he dared to challenge such people. Shan did not support his displeasure towards the guy, saying that since this young man risked accepting in reward, whatever abilities he had still existed. Wu Ji didn't know what he was talking about and asked him to say it directly. The man explained that they had received information that Su Wen and Li Hong's daughter had been hunted down by the illegal Hahuan group, and they had also learned that Wu Ji had taken it upon himself to protect Su Jiaqi, so they decided to welcome him. Wu Ji turned to leave. He said, since the greetings were over, he was free to go. The guy on the team started to get angry that Wu Ji dared to be impertinent to the leader. Shan asked him to calm down. He turned to Wu Ji again as he wanted to warn that the Hahuan were an extremely strong group, but they would be able to protect them. The important thing to remember was that he couldn't fight them alone. Wu Ji headed towards the exit with the words that he could handle it. The kid reiterated to the supervisor that this kid was too cocky. Shan only told him that he was angry at someone who wouldn't even live to see tomorrow. The lad agreed with him with the certainty that he could not be a worthy opponent. The house was already showing the purple dawn. Wu Ji walked over to Li Yao, who was standing by the window with a glass of champagne. He handed her a birthday present. It was a small pink box. Inside was a green expensive stone pendant. The girl said that it was too expensive a gift and she couldn't accept it. Muli calmed her down, replying that it had nothing to do with money, but one must remember to wear it as close to the body as possible. Li Yao still agreed, except that there was a disgruntled Jia Qi watching them from behind the wall. She was mad at him because he was giving away jade jewelry like hers. The girl thanked Muli and offered to go to a masquerade ball that would happen soon. The guy agreed to her offer. Guests enjoyed quiet moments of celebration, eating hors d'oeuvres and talking. Muli was dressed in his birthday suit. He glanced at the time on his watch. A man in a pink hair costume was watching him from the corner. He realized it was Jia Qi and asked who she was impersonating this time. The girl didn't expect him to guess so immediately and asked how he recognized her. He moved his shoulders, said he just felt it. The girl hurried down the stairs as quickly as possible. Li Yao put on her beautiful long carnival dress. Muli, when he saw her, was amazed by her appearance. The girl approached him, leaving admiring glances behind her, modestly asking if she looked too strange. He replied that it was very beautiful. The girl smiled and said then to go dance. Muli said he didn't really know how to do it. Li Yao took him under her arm with the words that she would help him. Jia Qi took off her hair head. Anger at Muli made her say that all guys are pigs. Suddenly the lights went out in the hall. The guests thought it would be some kind of surprise, but their expectations were in vain. They started to paw someone's hands. This girl was calling out for Muli to help, which made him very tense. He told Li Yao to wait on the spot while he went to see what's wrong. The girl told him to be careful. When Muli left, someone approached her from behind saying that she better worry about herself. These sudden words startled her very much. Her hand went higher little by little. That amulet that Muli had given her itself rose in the air, illuminating with a bright light. The bright light filled the dance hall more and more, its power making the flower petals from the girl's costume fly around her. The masked guys realized that she was protected by Yu Gu's power, which they could do nothing against but retreat. It was deep night outside, the moonlight making the leaves from the tree leave their shadow on the walls. The three masked guys talked among themselves. One of them was the head of Han, asked what they wanted to say. The kidnapping of the girl from the Li family had failed. His faction members were holding a large bag on their shoulders, which seemed to have someone in it. Said that they had put in maximum effort, but the military alliance had ambushed them. Mr. Bai appeared behind them, addressing Hong Daoba, saying that he was now definitely in his hands and would not escape anywhere else. Hong Daoba was the head of the Hahuan faction in his 32 years. He told Mr. Bai that his military alliance had been after his faction for a long time, and today he would pay him back. An eye for an eye. Some guy came out to them, saying that their feud of course had nothing to do with him. It was Wu Ji who continued that if they didn't return Su Jia Qi, they would run into big trouble. Mr. Bai slowed down Wu Ji and ordered him to step back as their forces were not equal and he was only leading himself to his doom. The guy, crossing his arms over his chest for full confidence, said he was giving them 1 minute. Immediately, Mr. Bai jerked from his seat towards Daoba with his arm outstretched, ready to use force. Bai Shan was ready to strike, but the guy managed to put up his fist as a defense. With a piercing look, he told Mr. Bai that he was underestimating him too much. The man tried to strike him with his other hand from the same side, but he managed to dodge a few centimeters to the opposite side. Their fists slammed one against the other with great force, causing the bright white light from their collision to slightly fill the visibility in front of their faces. Daoba grasped the knife that was tied behind his back on his red belt with his hand. With a sharp movement, he also pulled it out and stabbed it into Shan's stomach, who then coughed, lost the ability to breathe fully and struggle. Daoba grinned angrily and said that in war, all means are good, and now he would send him straight to hell. Suddenly he felt a strong jolt in the side of his stomach. Wu Ji decided that it was time to act and kicked him with his foot. The kick was so strong that Daoba couldn't hold the knife in his hand and it flew off to the side. The guy failed to control himself and was thrown a few meters away, leaving behind a large amount of dust and small stones. Wu Ji said with a calm voice that warned that he was only giving 1 minute. Daoba struggled to regain consciousness. The impact with his internal organs caused him to cough violently. Shan was surprised by his strength, even saying that he didn't seem to be this guy's equal. Daoba picked up the round purple pill with a question on Wu Ji: what kind of suicide bomber is this in front of him that allows him to display such strength? He popped this pill in his mouth. Uncountable seconds later, he screamed with a loud voice. His body transformed into a pumped up and stronger body several times larger. In a rough voice, he started laughing, and then said that they couldn't compete with him now, since he had swallowed the strength-increasing medicine from his great-grandfather, and now they were small in his eyes. He was standing against the wall where the impact of his body had left a mark. Wu Ji was beside him with instant speed, grabbed his head with his hand and pushed him onto a pile of rocks with the words that he was talking too much. The guy's entire body was under the weight of the stones, only his head remained outside. From the pressure of still Wu Ji, blood gushed out of his mouth. Shan was simply amazed by this guy, for he was even stronger than he thought. Wondering who he was, Wu Ji was able to overpower him. At this time, Jia Qi opened her eyes without immediately realizing the environment she was in. When she looked up, she saw 3 guys driving her somewhere in a car, and she began to wonder if she had been kidnapped. The car was traveling on a night road that was illuminated by streetlights. One of the kidnappers put his hand on Jia Qi's leg and said that soon he wouldn't be able to keep from seeing her. The girl told him not to touch her. He was already kissing her, even though she was screaming at him to back off. But the guy who was sitting in the front turned around and with a smile said not to hurry, since she belonged to Old Man Zhu. That's when he would play. Then they could have their own. With tears in her eyes, she remembered Muli, mentally asking where he was now. A bright purple light showed near the moving car. The guy who was sitting beside Jia Qi was dumbfounded when he saw this and asked his companions if they had seen it. His friend turned to him and asked what he was even talking about. Did he really want this girl so badly that something hit his brain? Except he didn't notice Muli standing far in front of the car. Jia Qi saw a green light around her that she seemed to have seen somewhere before. Suddenly their car came off the ground. It was Muli standing in front in the middle of the road who stopped them. After which he lowered his hand, and the car accordingly backed onto the ground. The door opened and a man's foot in brown shoes appeared outside. The guy took a gun from the salon with the words that there wouldn't be a wet spot left of him now, came out and with a yell started shooting anywhere forward. Muli could deftly catch some bullets and flip them aside. The guy reminded him that they had his girl. He looked into the interior of the car where Jia Qi had fallen onto the seats. He lifted her on his shoulders and walked closer to the sea, told Muli to stand still or he would throw her into the water to the fish. The guy heading towards him replied that he wouldn't dare to do that. He was already starting to get angry about Muli not believing him. After saying that it would only make him feel worse, he threw Jia Qi into the sea. Muli wished him dead with a penetrating gaze, and immediately punched him in the face. The guy was tossed aside, but Muli threw himself off the cliff and down into the water behind Jia Qi. He was close to her while she had not yet fallen downward, but was in flight. Still managed to catch her and gently took her by the waist. They almost managed to fall into the cold water, but Muli used his strength in time and held them in the air. He hugged her tightly in the air above the sea. Jia Qi slightly opened her eyes feeling this pleasant embrace, which was very comfortable to be in. Later that night, they returned home to their mansion. The girl was resting in her bed, with her father standing over her and Muli at the door. Leaning against the wall, he asked Mr. Su what he thought about it. The man replied that all the attackers had committed suicide by taking poison, including Hong Daoba. The guy reflected on the fact that there was no evidence this time either. He heard Jia Qi ask him to come over, sat beside her on the bed and asked if she was feeling better. The girl clenched the blanket in her fist. She jumped on him and started choking him, screaming that he was an idiot, that he wanted her dead, which really made the guy unable to breathe.